Check one, two. Check one, two. Check, check. Check one, two. Check one, two. Check one, two.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, feel free to move over. Thank you for being here. I think it's time. Hopefully, some people continue to trickle in, but out of respect for all of your time and all of our families who have volunteered these hours in their day to come and share their stories with us, let's kick it off. And we have also many people who are joining us online, and I apologize you can't see them all, but they are here because this is an incredibly important issue for our state and our children. Um, is my coach on here? Not yet. All right. Well, we I asked you all to join us today because Birth to Three is one of the most important investments, in my opinion, that we make in our children. The research is unambiguous about the life altering and lifelong impact that Birth to Three has on our kids. And you guys are a really wonderful example of not working in silos, right? You work across agencies, but I think sometimes because of that, also you don't get the spotlight. And so I wanted to really shine a spotlight on this work and really ensure that we are prioritizing our investment in Birth to Three, because I think of the way it is integrated between multiple agencies, particularly from a funding perspective. You don't also get that focus that I think you need and deserve and is really important. So I'm excited to highlight this work you guys do, the impact you have on children and families, and make sure that we keep the funding needs to provide these services front and center for this session. So thanks for joining us before session even begins. And I'm really excited for all the information you're going to share. So with that, I will hand it over to Commissioner Trueworthy, and I'll just say it's not new news, but we're really excited to see you here in this capacity as commissioner. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Leeper, and the other distinguished members of the legislature. I really want to thank you for holding this informational forum on Birth to Three, where we can really highlight and spotlight the really critical work that happens day in and day out with our young children and families. We really see at the Office of Early Childhood Birth to Three being such an integral component to our whole early childhood system, especially as it relates to reaching children early on in their lives who are experiencing delays or disabilities, and approaching the families with a warm and responsive coaching approach that really makes a difference. In this forum today, you'll hear how Birth to Three works, right? How it's funded, and how Birth to Three really relies on a lot of partners and providers in the community to provide those high quality services. Most importantly, you'll hear from families, and they're really moving stories. I know as commissioner, I've received letters and heard different testimony from families, and each time I learn something new and am just amazed with how Birth to Three supports families and how families become such amazing advocates for their children and their communities. I want to thank the partners who are here, especially our State Department of Education and our partnership with the Department of Social Services. Just as the representative said, that we do not do this work alone. We work in close collaboration and partnership with many there. And lastly, this work can't happen without the tremendous professionals out there in the field, highly skilled, highly educated, working tirelessly day in and day out, and so committed to this work that we see. And also want to thank the OEC staff for your leadership and your commitment to this work as well. Now, I think it's best to start with the family, right? Really ground us in what this means and what this has meant for families. So I'd love to introduce Corinne and Rob Christie, who would share their story. Thank you for being here.
Thank you guys so much for having us. We're really grateful and thankful to be here to share our story with you. We don't have anything prepared, so bear with us. And I'm also gonna do my best to not get emotional because I already feel emotional. But when I think back, so we have 2.5-year-old twins. So in and of itself, a big struggle. But when you go to the doctor and, you know, they ask you all these questions about your kid's development and you hear yourself saying, no, they're not doing that a lot. It's very scary. You might have to take over. But it's very scary and it's not what you expect when you're having children. And you're hearing like you should reach out to Birth3 and you're a first-time parent. You have no idea what this means. And we obviously did reach out to Birth3, and I've never been more thankful for anything in my parent journey to have a group of people who care. Who care as much about my children as we do. So both of our children have some delays, but when I think of Birth3, I more so think about my son, who has speech and motor delays and potentially on the spectrum. And what we've learned from Birth3 is invaluable. The services he's received are invaluable. We've learned how to better work with, thank you. We've learned how to better work with our own son and to, you know, cater to each of our 2 children's needs so differently. We've learned how to advocate better for our son, and just like be able to celebrate all of the wins that he does have. And the services that he's received, it's been so great to see all of the strides that he has made. I text his developmental specialist almost daily with videos of, oh, look at this thing that we've been working on that he just did. And things that are so small that you would never think of, things that my daughter did without issue and we never thought anything of it, but to see our son doing through all of the services that he's receiving, having just been on vacation and watching him say hi to people as they walked by, it was really moving and touching for us. So Birth3 has not only become such an important part of our village that we have with our children, they've really become such an important part of our family in general. I look at the people that see him frequently, his developmental specialist, Liberty, speech language, Amy, like they are part of our family. And I can't possibly thank them enough for all the work that they've done. I can't be thankful enough that these services are offered for our children, and that we're able to be the best parents we could be for them. Even outside of the services that they receive directly, like being able to do things like Circle of Security, which our developmental specialist, you know, told me about. And I was like, yes, please sign me up. And just being able to be a better parent for both of my children and being able to, you know, identify things in my own past that will help me be a better person and better parent as well. I just can't say thank you enough. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say, but
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like the most common parenting cliche is like it takes a village, and we really have found our village with Birth3. And just, I remember our son Parker was evaluated in December of 2024. I remember Christmas Day, we just were like, all right, we have to put him in the car, take him for a drive because we just didn't know what to do. We couldn't help him. We didn't have any of the skills. And I just was reflecting on Christmas of this year. We were at a friend's house. It was 2 hours past bedtime. He was having a great time. I was able to get him dressed, his diaper changed, all within like 2 minutes. And to do that with a toddler 2 hours past bedtime, I never would have ever imagined I'd be able to do that. And it was just, the skills that I've learned through Birth to Three and everything that was really like the difference a year can make was, I'm getting emotional thinking about it. So
Yeah. At the end of the day, I think every child is so different. All of their needs are so different. And having two at the same age, we had to learn that very quickly. And that's very hard to accept. But Birth to Three has helped us accept that and learn how to cater to our children individually as individuals and not just as twins, as two kids the same age. And in doing so, we've seen them both flourish so much more than they would have without Birth to Three. So thank you for letting us share a little bit of our story. Thank you for having us here today. And thank you for these services. I don't know what we would have done without them. Thank you.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing, for being here, for sharing your story. I think it's like essential. This is exactly what Birth to Three does. And if you haven't ever interacted with Birth to Three, you probably don't know. You just sort of hear about it. And it's really life-changing for people. And I've heard a lot of stories over the years, sort of similar to yours, saying, you have this idea of what parenting is going to be like, then you have these children and your journey might not be anything like what you thought it was going to be. And having people to support you. And I heard you say like sort of acceptance on your journey, and then celebrating the child you do have because you feel supported and you have the skills. So thank you so much for sharing this story. I feel emotional just listening to it. Thank you.
Great. I'm now going to hand it over to Nicole Cassette. She is our Part C coordinator and leader for Birth to Three at the Office of Early Childhood.
Thank you, Commissioner Trueworthy. And also to all the families today, just thank you so much for sharing your story. Your story is incredible and you're such a good parent. I just want to say the pride that you had is amazing. And it's similar to all of the families that will share their stories or families that have written some of their story today if they could not come. So thank you to the families and the providers, because without the providers who are so dedicated, we wouldn't have a system. It's easy to sit at the OEC and help support providers, but it's what makes me most proud of the system is those that are in the field and really supporting families. We've prepared a few slides today about early intervention and some of our coordination amongst many different stakeholders and different state agencies and our interagency coordinating council. And there are some slides related to the Connecticut State Department of Education and our work that we do related to transition. And first, we'll talk a bit about what IDEA really guides us. So IDEA is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and it is housed in the U.S. Department of Education under the Office of Special Education Programs. And each year we submit federal reports, and it is we have benchmarks that we have to meet. There is a lot of information about this system. If you could go to next slide. There is information related to Part C and Part B in this, and I will point you to our website in a moment where you can find a lot of information related to our data, procedures, and evidence-based practices, and all of the information, because we can talk about this topic for many hours, and we have trainings that are all-day trainings related to Part C and Part B. So early intervention, again, that's IDEA in Connecticut. The lead agency is the Office of Early Childhood, and I'm honored to work alongside amazing people who are really dedicated in supporting the field. I'm going to briefly pass it over to my colleague, Renee, who will talk a little bit about the 3 to 5-year-olds, and we'll come back to what preschool special education and how early intervention interact. But I'm going to pass right over to Renee.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Renee Kleiman, the Early Childhood Special Education Consultant. that oversees the preschool special education, which is IDEA Part B, Section 619 under IDEA. And I have with me also our director of the Bureau of Special Education, because that is where I sit. So this is really where Nicole was talking about that collaboration. Nicole and I work really closely together to really look at the system and the transition from Part C to Part B. Part B is the beginning of a family's journey into the public school system, where children are evaluated to determine if they're eligible for special education services. And that is provided through their school district. So it's a real big change for families. And like Nicole said, we'll speak more about the transition, but going from working with an agency that is often people coming into your home or into your child's child care center, and then transitioning to the public schools.
All right. If we go to the next slide, you will see our website. So birth2three.org will provide you a lot of information related to early intervention in Connecticut, provide some data that we will talk about today, and then additional data points if you are interested. We are going to barely skim the surface related to early intervention today. So I highly encourage anyone to take a look at our website and learn a little bit more if you're interested. Next slide. Thank you. In terms of in recent years, our system has gone through a lot of different changes and different legislative changes, funding changes in Connecticut. Starting back in 2017, the system went from a bundled rate to a fee for service and had not really evaluated the rates that were currently put in place at that point in time until 2023, when there was a cost study rate analysis completed. In that time, during 2021 legislative session, there was early intervention services over 3 enacted, which is a great opportunity for families who have children with summer birthdays, and that is May 1st through the start of the school year. That allows for families to have seamless transitions in the fall. There was a lot of research that supports the impact of supporting children over the summer. If they have a lapse in services, there was indicators for regression and development, other things. So that was the intent of the legislation. But again, Birth2Three took on more children during those summer months. And in addition, during that time, we were incredibly thankful for the removal of family fees. So in 2021, previous to 21, there were a sliding scale of family fees, and those were removed from the legislation at that point. Again, in 2023, there was a rate study cost analysis, and in last legislative session, there were some appropriations in the state line item to support what had been put forth in the rate study cost analysis. If you go to the next slide, this is just a breakdown of the Birth2Three funding, just high level that you'll see. We are funded through a few different mechanisms. There's the state appropriations, Medicaid, which is the federal and state match of Medicaid, and you'll see that outlined on the slide. And then there is also some federal Part C dollars that support the system as well. In total, we are just under $70 million in terms of the cost to provide early intervention services in Connecticut. We also bill commercial insurance. I should note that. Yes.
Do you guys mind if I ask questions
Not
along
at
the
all.
way? Sorry. Do you guys is it per student enrolled that the federal funding is adjusted, or is this like the bucket of money you get for all the students that we need to serve?
So for our federal dollars, it is based on census, but not on census of those enrolled in early intervention. Is Connecticut census. We just get a bucket of monies through the appropriated funds at the federal level. It is, I will tell you that number. Our federal Part C dollars is, I believe, just under $5 million in total, but it is a small sliver in terms of what the system is in relative to the state appropriations and Medicaid.
Do you happen to know if there's been any proposals to adjust the way in which we receive these funds from the federal government?
I have not heard anything at the federal level in terms of the way in which we're receiving the funds. One thing that often comes up is the appropriation that's in the Part C bucket for the nation. And then that's divided by our state allocation. And that is, again, based on the census and how large the state is. Nationally, we are receiving similar funds to like Louisiana based on census, but there have not been discussions largely around how it's appropriated.
Okay, great. Just ask because on the K-12 side, there's major changes proposed about how we are going to go to block grants instead of the current. So I wasn't sure if you guys were experiencing any sort of conversations around that type of restructuring of
It's-
federal dollars.
It's been spoken of. At the current moment, it's sort of separate from Part B, but there have been conversations. That has largely been tied to Part D funding, which is some of the grant funds that we receive. So we currently have a leadership grant. We just sunset a professional development grant. Some of those funds maybe. Part C, it's been in flow of conversation in terms of block granting into Part B and what that might look like, but there's been a sort of a discourse in those conversations, and I have not heard anything as of late. All right, not happening.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I appreciate that.
No, that's
And
helpful.
generally speaking, across every sector, funding conversations have been ebbing and flowing. And so I'll just trust we'll stay in communication should any major changes arise. Thank you. Thank you for letting me interrupt.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. All right, I'm going to pass to my colleague Becca, and she will review the next slide. And we will also have some partners who are at the table discuss from an ICC perspective.
Good afternoon. I am Rebecca Smith. I am the Education and Outreach Coordinator. I oversee our Systems Child Find, as well as am the liaison for our state's Interagency Coordinating Council. The State Interagency Coordinating Council is a set of key stakeholders from throughout the state that includes program representatives, family representatives, community partners, state agency officials, and their role is to advise the lead agency on the operations of Birth to Three. And we meet bi-monthly. And these are actually meetings that are required through IDEA as well as through the Connecticut General State Statute. And we have with us two of our program representatives, Julie Hall from Loomability Kids Steps and Elaine Balsey from Reach Out Inc. And I'm going to pass it on to them.
Hi, I'm Elaine Balsley. I'm from Reach Out. I'm the ICC member. I'm on the Legislative Fiscal Committee. Our PowerPoint, unfortunately, is not available, so I'm going to bring over one copy because there's a lot of data in here. I'm going to let Julie start.
So we recently just did a lot of work on in terms of our vision and mission statement for the Independent Interagency Coordinating Council. And the focus is really about how do we support the system? And that's the role of the council itself, is to be able to advise and assist the lead agency and assist with transition, as well as providing ongoing reports about how the state is doing on an annual basis to all of you and to the governor's office. This council exists as part of the IDEA. It's a requirement that we hold this and that we are combined with other stakeholders in the community, so that, and it has requirements for at least 20% parents activity on the council too, because obviously their perspective is most important. And we want to ensure that all families get the services that they need and how we can partner together to improve upon what we are already delivering. Yeah, I'll let you take over.
So we have 3 committees on the ICC. We have Personnel Development and System Support, Outreach and Education, and Legislative Fiscal. And those 3 committees are looking at different aspects of the Birth to Three system, what's working, what are the challenges and the needs. Birth to Three, and there's concerns of challenges and needs around our ability to provide services to families. In 2019, we had 18 comprehensive programs. Of those 18 comprehensive programs, we had 11 that would provide specialty autism services, and we had 3 programs that would provide specialty services for deaf and hard of hearing population. Now in 2026, we have only 12 comprehensive programs, down from 18. 11 are still providing services to children with autism spectrum disorder. And the 3 programs who were providing specialty services for the deaf and hard of hearing population are no longer comprehensive programs. They are supporting the comprehensive programs with that population. Why fewer programs? The reduction in the number of programs is a result of us being unable to continue under the financial constraints. We have had birth to 3 programs that have ended their contract early.
So one of the things that we've noticed is that there's been a huge increase in the use of our services. So to give you an idea, is in FY19, we had 10,810 children that were referred to the program. As of FY25, it's now 13,066. So it's an increase of 21% over that period of time. Over FY25, we have served in one capacity or another over 15,000 children in Connecticut. The numbers are pretty astounding when you think of the volume of children in our state that are receiving services and how few providers and programs are coming together to do that and the systems that are supporting them. In FY25, there were 14,613 eligibility evaluations provided to children. So anyone that has a concern in the state can make a referral, and we follow through with testing every one of those children and families where there is a concern. It's a lot of children to be thinking about, and of those 14,000 plus that were evaluated, compared to 11,700 and change in FY24 the year before. In 1 year, that's a 24% increase over just the last year. Of these evaluations that were done in FY25, 55% of them were found eligible, so it's just under 8,000 children.
So in terms of the data, and this is the data that the ICC is looking at, that's been provided by the lead agency. Children on the autism diagnosis in 2019 were provided an average of 35 hours per month due to the intensity of the child's needs. Right now, they're receiving approximately 11 hours per month. So a really big reduction in services. In fiscal year 19, the combined average hours per child was 7.3 hours per month. In FY25, the average is 5 hours. So we're only providing 69% of the services that we were in FY19. And so that sort of data is the information that we're looking at the ICC in our committees, and because that is having a big impact on families and children and our ability to meet the needs of these families.
So while it sounds like all doom and gloom, I don't want it to leave like that. Clearly, we're making an impact on the children we are seeing. That then there's a lot of strengths to the system that we have in place right now. There's an unparalleled level of commitment by all the partners in the Birth to 3 system and working with the Birth to 3 system. People often come to this profession and then they don't leave. We jokingly refer to them as lifers in Birth to 3. But that's because it takes a very special breed of people to be able to do this kind of work. It's all relationship-based work. We also have, the ICC is also has a mechanism for public comment. So it's not just the people on the committee that we're receiving the information as we're gathering. We invite every meeting, we invite openly for people to come forward to bring the good, the bad, the ugly. We want to learn from it all and to improve the system as a whole. And this partnership also allows looking at how are we being able to enhance a parent's ability to care for their child and help them participate and learn in the best way possible, providing evidence-based practices available to the family.
So we have a lot of workforce challenges. I think agencies are dealing with that. We have been experiencing a high turnover rate. We have staff burnout and sort of a vicarious trauma that's leading to burnout. Our caseloads are high. There is no waiting list for birth to 3 because we're an entitlement program. So more kids come into the system, you have less staff, you still have to take on those children, which ultimately means the children are getting less services. Or you're overwhelming staff and they aren't able, to do the job that they really want to do. And that will cause them to maybe look elsewhere. We have the graduating clinicians that are coming up are the pay scales, the loans that they're taking requires a higher reimbursement rate. And I think the work is, as Julie was saying, the work is wonderful and it's rewarding. And we have lifers. I'm a lifer. But it's hard. And the expectation of being perfect, being 100% compliant without sort of that administrative support can be difficult.
The other challenge that we're facing is that even graduating classes are not recognizing that there's not as big awareness that this is even an option for pursuing it in terms of following up with education. And yet it has the impact, such a huge impact on the trajectory long-term for families and children and their success. We do have a story here from you for one of the parents who wished she could be here, but had an unfortunate medical issue that came up. If you saw Hello Connecticut recently, the mom was on there talking about birth to 3. This is her story about her son Maverick. And she writes, "Our son Maverick was born at 33 weeks and 3 days. He was 2 pounds, 15 ounces, and 15 inches long. When Maverick was born premature, we did not know what his future would look like, as many premature babies face a lot of barriers and obstacles. When we were discharged from the hospital, we were discharged with the gift of birth to 3, and I call it a gift because it has given us nothing but support and comfort over the past 2 years. When we met our birth to 3 worker, it was an immediate connection. She provided the assurance that we needed in the beginning of this journey. At that time, when we went week to week, our birth to 3 worker taught us techniques and strategies to use to assist our son in meeting his milestones. And when he did, I didn't text my best friends or my family. I texted my birth to 3 worker first. Why? Because she was in it with us. It was similar to Liberty's family. She celebrated those wins with us as if it were her own child. Birth to 3 provides a lifeline to those days and nights where the doubt and fear set in. I can honestly say I've never felt alone. Not only did our worker come to our home, but she went to our son's daycare to ensure that his classroom teachers were able to support him as well, and to ensure that the environment he was in was set up for him to be successful. As we come to the end of our time with Birth to 3, I'm happy to say that without the support of and dedication of our Birth to 3 worker, Maverick would not be where he is today. I cannot say enough about our experience and how lucky all families are and will be from receiving the gift of Birth to 3. Brianna.
Thank you.
In terms of the transition from birth to 3, we're happy to say that some families, 16% of kids who exit birth to 3 no longer need any supports and services. 23% of the children do not need Part B services. 29% of families exit from birth to 3 before their child's 3rd birthday due to relocating, losing contact, or other reasons that right now we don't have the data to support what those reasons are. And right now, 32% of children who exit birth to 3 actually transition to the Part B of IDEA. So 39% of children who started in birth to 3 with a significant developmental delay for an average of 12 months, only 39% of those children are requiring special education services. I know that Nicole's going to talk a little bit about transition. And so I think maybe if we just, like in closing, talk about our one.
So I think this is where the numbers come to play. In the rate study that Nicole had referred to, suggested that 10.8 million be allocated to the OEC line in the first year, 12.78 or 12.7 million in the second year, needing a match of a DSS budget of line item of 8.1 million in the first year and 9.5 in the second. Last year, at the start of the session, when the governor proposed his budget, there was no funds in for FY '26. FY '27, it was 6 million and 4.5 for OEC and DSS respectively. The final, it was even cut further, and we're not sure as to the reason why, but it was a net increase of 2.8. So it was 3.8 minus 1 million for GAP, that was funds that were removed, and 2.9 for DSS funding. The challenge is we're significantly underfunded. There hasn't been any rate change for 10 years, almost 10 years, once these are to be implemented in FY '27. And the evidence is there that the program is struggling. We're with the loss of programs that are joining, staff turnover being high, not being able to attract and retain new clinicians. All of these pieces, our hands are tied with the numbers financially. So our big ask is that you help us in terms of finding the need for stability and looking at those rates and being able to do that. And then there's the language around the general administrative payment that was the Children's Committee had put into statute, I believe that was 2 years ago, stating that it would be a $200 gap payment per child, where previously it had been something that had been administered through the OEC, which wasn't an issue, but we were waiting for this rate study to come through, and it was there to stabilize programs and then be readdressed and reassessed for the need of once rates were implemented. We're not there yet. We haven't had it. And so for it to come out prematurely is detrimental to the program. These increased dollars that we're talking about would approximate $14,000 or 14% increase overall. But once you take that $1 million out of GAP budget, it drops any increase for a program down to 6. It's and currently the funding is so short, the gap is so wide. It's causing problems for trying to even budget for what are we going to do for next year? How do we make that happen? But thank you very much. And we really appreciate your support.
Thank you.
I have one more ask. In terms of looking at a permanent review cycle. So it's been 10 years since we've had an increase, and 2 years since we had the cost study with no changes. And so I know Massachusetts has a permanent review schedule built in, and I don't know how that works legislatively, but that would be, I'm sorry, that last ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate. Oh,
No, I was going to say,
apologies,
we're here to hear
Representative.
the ask. So thank you. And also I'll speak for myself. I'm aware of how sort of dire it's become. And another reason I wanted to make sure you had this opportunity to make sure everybody is aware of this. And these data are striking in the reduction of services to our kids. And when we know the impact that you said, only 39% of the children you serve transition to K-12 special ed. These are dollars very well invested. So just really appreciate that. And just want to make sure maybe that our clerk will have a copy of this to share with committee members and anybody else who might be joining and wants access to this information, because these data are really striking. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Was just going to underscore, right? This is why the important role of the ICC, right? To be able to bring those real stories and experiences of what's happening on the ground, the historical perspective, as well as they said, they're lifers, right? We see so much commitment from programs, and appreciate being able to work in partnership closely with them to see how we can improve our services and do more for children and families, and greatly appreciative of the role of the legislature in approving increases for this fiscal year coming up.
Thank you. And I just want to recognize Representative Walker online has a question. I think. There's a hand up. Can you hear me, Representative Walker? You're muted. We can come back to you.
Okay.
Of course, Representative Reddington Hughes.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for all the hard work that you do, because you certainly are changing lives of the smallest people that we have in the state, that will be someday our next leaders. I'm curious, when you were going over the programs and you said that they no longer have comprehensive programs for the deaf and the hard of hearing. Are there any plans of reinstating any of these? And if somebody has a child that would be in that category, what would they do?
Sure, we can take that, Nicole.
Sure. So currently, we have 3 deaf and hard of hearing providers, and they are support-only programs. So when a referral comes in and there's a concern for hearing loss or documented hearing loss, that child is referred to a comprehensive program with the deaf and hard of hearing program support program immediately tied, so that they can support the child. Becca has been deeply involved in the work. We have a memo because our goal as an agency is to really connect families immediately and ensure, and I know that that's a strong push and a advocacy amongst our deaf and hard of hearing providers. They work extremely hard. They want to make sure that children are supported as soon as possible once we identify them in our system. So Becca, I don't know if you want to talk about the process in terms of the referral, but that is something that we're acutely aware of and really working hard with our programs to ensure that children are supported.
Thank you.
Okay, so essentially when a child is referred who is deaf, hard of hearing, so we have a documented hearing loss, they are automatically assigned to whatever deaf, hard of hearing program is at the top of rotation. And they will be the initial program to really make that initial contact with family, be able to talk to the families about the different programs and giving families that information so they can make an informed decision of how they want to move forward for their child's communication.
Thank you for that. And I think, sorry, did I cut you off? Are you still answering? I was just going to say, I think Representative Walker,
I got unmuted finally. I finally got the button to work. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, guys, for bringing this to our attention. We used to have another program that was called the Visitation Program that was started in Bridgeport and spread that spread to, I guess, Fairfield County. Is that one still in existence? Hello?
sorry. I think that is not technically a Birth to 3 program. That was through, the Office of Healthcare Strategy.
So yes, I believe what you're referring to is our universal nurse home visiting pilot approach, which did start in Bridgeport and has spread to southeastern Connecticut area. So these are 2 different programs.
Okay.
Yes.
No, I remember at one point the commissioner of OEC sort of talked about both of them simultaneously in presentations to us, and that's why I was curious, because I thought they were different audiences, but I believe maybe I'm not sure, and I wanted to make sure. So the existing budget for you for your Birth to 3 is about 69 million. Is that what I heard when I was trying to?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, and the 69 million, of the 69 million, you still have a gap, and was that the 10.8 million?
It was the 10.8 million for the first year.
Okay, is there a funding gap? Let me ask you a question. Is there a funding gap for you?
Yes.
Okay, how much is the funding gap?
When the original rate study had a total of 24.4 million, I believe, over 2 years was the recommendation for implementation. 23.4, sorry.
Okay, I'll do 24 is the gap, and that's over 2 years?
That was the recommendation in the study, yes.
Okay, and that was including the staffing increases too?
That was an entire rate increase, that was to support the rate increases. In the
Okay.
study itself, I highlighted all the areas where the cost of providing services was not being met by the current system. I'd be happy to share that further if you'd like.
Yes, I'd like if you could share it with me in appropriations, and I could share it with my co-chairs. That would be appreciated, because that's critical, and I love the Birth to Three program, and I've seen it do its magic with children and families. So, and I think the other thing that I'm sort of looking at is the fact that a lot of the kids that we're seeing moving into special ed are in the K-5 system. And so they would have probably, if they were able, they would have probably had some sort of Birth to Three intervention as a child. But because of COVID, we had very, very different types of presentations of services. And so I think the fact that COVID affected a lot of the families, that's why maybe there's some severe increases that you're experiencing, because we're seeing them in special ed in the K-12 system, period. So I'd be curious to follow up on that and just see, because I think we owe it to everybody to identify some of the gaps that we experienced during COVID that really have had long-term effects on other areas in government. So thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Representative. And Representative Comey has a question also.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for your presentation, and I'm excited to learn more. I have one comment and then one question. In full disclosure, one of my best friends is a Birth to Three provider, and I would just acknowledge that you're not only providing, developmental services and all of those services, but you're also making referrals for other needs, for housing, for human services. And I just know this because she'll reach out to me and say, hey, where can I find this information? Where can I find speaking a different, certain language, those sorts of things, translators. So it is a job that is really holistic in its needs for the family. My question is that I know that some of the states have different, and I'm not so sure I know the name of it, but there's different scales of which you determine whether or not a child is eligible. And can you just talk I don't know who I'm directing this question to, but can you just talk about, compared to other states, where do we sit in this? And then, what happens when children are just not quite there, don't quite need the services, and how do we continue to follow up with them, I guess?
Sure. If we go a couple of slides ahead, there's a slide that outlines some of the eligibility for Connecticut. In terms of where we are with other states, that question is asked quite a bit, and it's hard to say because there's different criteria, there's different state legislation. Often, as an example, we hear Massachusetts is at risk, and where is Connecticut in terms of eligibility? When I speak to my colleagues, in particularly, I've had some conversations with my colleague in Massachusetts, and some of their at-risk criteria is actually items that we are documenting as an automatically eligible condition in our system. So we're picking up on those children. For example, low birth weight, prematurity, lead exposure. The QR code brings you right to our auto-eligible list. And in terms of other states and other eligibility, there are 3 different criteria that states can adopt, if you will, in terms of the eligibility. Connecticut's criteria C under the federal government, and that is 2 standard deviations away from typically developing peers in one area or 1.5 in 2 areas of development, or having a diagnosed condition, regardless of demonstrating developmental delay at that point, because we know that research indicates that intervening early, especially with some of those conditions, it makes a huge difference. Those auto-eligible conditions are also vetted through our pediatric counterpart. We have a contract with a pediatrician that we consult with often to ensure that we're updating that list as needed, and we are doing our due diligence in terms of supporting children. In terms of those that are not eligible, I believe the next slide has the information for children who are not eligible. So we work closely with our counterparts. There's a lot of state partners. There's a slide in this deck that outlines all of the partners: Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center, state partners such as CSDE, DSS, DDS. We connect to a lot of folks, but in terms of those who are ineligible, we will connect them with Help Me Grow. Sparkler will talk, there's a slide later in this slide deck that talks to the legislation related to an app, and we are currently using Sparkler. Community research resources, and also CPAC is always a great resource. They are our parent training institute, and they support families of children in both Part C and Part B, and they follow families throughout, and we're really grateful for that partnership.
I think a really important message here is that as an agency as a whole, right, that supports young children, prenatal up to 5, even older, we're really looking to build how we work together within our agency and ensure that all children are supported with what they need, right? And that might look different depending upon the child and the family. And so we really want to be promoting early developmental screenings to ensure that children who need to get referred to Birth to 3 get referred to Birth to 3 for that further evaluation, more intensive supports, et cetera. But there might be other supports that are very beneficial for children and families at that young age, such as Help Me Grow, right? Such as, to the representative's point, right? Universal nurse home visiting or other home visiting services or early care and education, right? That children and families are supported wherever they're going, and that we're making sure that they're getting to the place where they really need to be.
Commissioner, we have one more question online from Representative Welander.
Good afternoon. I apologize for not being able to be there in person or on camera. I'm not feeling 100% today, but thank you, Madam Chair, for this opportunity. I just wanted to, like my colleagues, acknowledge the incredible work that Birth to 3 does in partnership with the OEC and how important it is. And I have spoken with Elaine in the past about this, and I was just reviewing some notes. And I was wondering if we could just sort of re-emphasize a couple of points that I think are incredibly important to restate. And one of them is that when I was reviewing my notes and I spoke with Elaine about a year ago, at that point there were 16 programs left. But can she potentially confirm that at this point there are 12?
So we currently contract with 18 contracted direct service providers, and those providers are comprised of comprehensive programs that support and specialize in autism supports, and then the 3 deaf and hard of hearing programs.
Okay, so even just in 1 year, excuse me, we've lost some supports already. And another point I just wanted to reemphasize is the fact that Birth to 3 is not able to have a wait list, so that every child who needs supports gets it, which I think should be the goal for all of us in any type of support systems. But that means that the number of hours and attention does drop significantly. And thinking about our work on the Select Committee for Special Education last year, and looking at the dramatic increase that we've seen over the last 15 years, plus the additional costs, it is so important that we really continue to support these early interventions. Because I think they really do provide, just looking at financially, a bonus for our communities, in addition to actually making sure that our children can live and grow and be as successful as possible. And I think that's about all I have. And thank you, Madam Chair.
You got it, Rep. Welander. Thank you for that. I think you hit the nail on the head where we know the services that are provided through Birth to Three are great for children because they are addressing identified gaps and really closing those gaps so children are prepared to be successful in K through 12. We know that also the services provided for Birth to Three are critically important to parents and families in numerous ways. And then we also know because of the way you guys are able to address those delays and help kids be successful, you're also saving money in our K-12 system. And I think that piece, while that's not like the why we believe in this work, it's also really important. And I think highlighting that, and I always say this work is coalition building. So if you're a little less focused on the really great work we're doing for kids, but really care about our budget, there's space for you in this investment. So thanks, Rep. Welander, for really highlighting that important point. And we keep interrupting you, and I'm sorry, but I hope you can feel how excited we are about your work and really engaged with it.
No, we appreciate the questions, right? Because we want to make sure that we're providing the information where you have questions, right? And there's so much that we can cover as we continue. And in our slides are also a lot of data, right? One thing that we definitely have with Birth to Three is a lot of data that we can use to really evaluate and plan for the programs and the children's needs. So. Great, we're going to continue. Yep.
Okay, so what does Birth to Three look like? So we use 3 best practices in order to support our families with evidence-based practices. And that consists of natural learning environmental practices. We are where those families and children are. We are in the homes, childcare centers, the park. We go to medical appointments with families. So we are really where that family needs support most. We use a primary service provider approach to teaming, which is where every single family has an entire team of multiple disciplines that supports them, but one main person is going into the home. Along with this, we use coaching as a style of interaction. And what that is not us just talking at the family or the caregivers, but really working with them. What's working? What's not working? What do you want to work on? Where are you having challenges? And so we're really working with them within their own environments on what it is they want to focus on to support their child's development. By doing all 3 of these together, it leads to increased participation, confidence, and competence for both the parent or caregiver and the child. And this aligns very much with what our goal is when we report to the federal government, which is parents of children who have a diagnosed condition will be able to describe their child's abilities and challenges more effectively as a result of the participation in early intervention. Next slide. So children learn through an incredible amount of practice. And I love this example because all of us who know or work with little kids, we all know when they're learning to walk, that's all they want to do. They want to move. They don't want to stop going. They just want to move. And when you look at this, it says it's 9,000 steps per day or the length of 29 football fields. There's no way we could get that many steps within an hour or an hour and a half visit. So by supporting families, we're helping to work on those strategies to support hitting those 9,000 steps in a day. So activity leads to learning opportunity that leads to skill development. It's not starting with an isolated skill and embedding them into a routine. Put on to Nicole.
Thank you, Becca. If you could go to the next slide, we have a lot of slides related to transitions. Some outlines what IDEA requires of the state in terms of working collaboratively with our colleagues at CSDE or local education agencies. In addition, I just want to highlight that Birth to Three is always focused on transition planning. So regardless of going into Part B, we will connect families with resources and really focus on that transition plan out of the system. It is something that is outlined federally that we must do, and I'm going to pass it to a parent who will share some of her story. She is online. Her name is Lisa Opert, and she's an incredible person. But I just want to highlight, we're going to go very quickly through transition, and we have a lot of information, but you have the slide deck so you can refer back to it. And there's a couple of slides that really outline the differences between Part C and Part B and all of the federal requirements. But we will hear from Lisa, and then we will carry out with the transition content.
Sure. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so very much for your time. I appreciate each and every one of you. My name is Lisa Opert, and I am a mom of 4 amazing children. 2 of those children have received birth to 3 services, and both of their experiences looked very different. But we are forever grateful for the knowledge that we learned through both of our experiences that helped shape our parenting today. Our first experience with birth to 3 was with our very first child. We thought we were going to have this neurotypical, beautiful birth, and we ended up having something very different. It was traumatic, and our baby ended up in the NICU for a bunch of time. When we came home, we were in automatic eligibility due to seizure activity. And this wonderful woman came into my home and validated all the fears I felt as a new parent, helped me understand that my child was doing things differently right now, but we were going to put some things in place to support him, and really helped us shape that first year of development for him. We were very fortunate that when Emmett, who's my oldest, turned a year old, we no longer needed birth to 3. He was no longer eligible because of the supports that were put in place very early on. So then we went on to have another child. And he was neurotypical and tricked us into thinking that this was easy. And then we had another baby, and it turned out to be 2. So we had 4 children in 5 years, and those twins were really exceptional and incredible, but overwhelming. At about 18 months old, I realized that one of my twins, his name is Milo, was developing differently. And there were kind of some red flags that we were seeing. We brought it to our pediatrician. We asked for the MCHAT that you do at 18 months, and he was able to explain all of our concerns away because he kind of thought we were comparing him to his twin sister. And he said, you know, boys develop differently. And I left that doctor's appointment and thought, but I've already had 2 boys, so I really know kind of what he should be doing. I went home and I called 2-1 and asked for an evaluation for birth to 3. They were out within my house within a couple of weeks, and Milo was eligible for birth to 3. We did that same MCHAT with birth to 3, and that team validated all of our concerns, and they said, our parenting gut was right. We knew that something was going on. And so that MCHAT, which is really kind of a pre-evaluation, brought us to having an autism evaluation called an ADOS, or an Autism Diagnostic Observation Schedule. And Milo was determined to be eligible under autism for special education. Well, not yet, but he was diagnosed with autism, and we were very overwhelmed. We were sad. We were worried about how this was going to impact the rest of our children, and our future as a family. We switched to an autism-specific program and had an incredible team that devoted their time to our son, as well as his siblings and us as parents. This wasn't just about this individual student. This was about our family as a whole. They helped us support his communication, social interaction, playing with peers, and most importantly, that interaction between his siblings. Birth 3 saw us as a family and helped us get to the best outcome in the short 11 months that we had together in that program. I learned that my child was more than a disability. I learned that my child was who he was supposed to be, and that my husband and I were the perfect parents for him and our other children as well. I was able to really learn how to parent differently to meet Milo's needs, but they also showed me that I can parent them all differently to meet their needs. What a gift it was to have people to bounce ideas off of without judgment. Parenthood is lonely, and parenting a neurospicy child or multiple children who are neurospicy can be even more lonely than expected. Of course, after such an amazing experience in Birth to Three, we're so sad to hear that we were going to have to transition out when he turned 3 years old. We learned that there was going to be 3 meetings. The first was a transition meeting, which was held by Birth to Three team, and we chose to have it at the school because, quite honestly, we wanted to get our eyes on this team that we were supposed to entrust our biggest gift to the world with. We went there very prepared to talk about Milo's strengths as well as his areas of concern. We were able to really articulate what we think he needed to be successful. We talked a lot about that, and we watched how people interacted with him. We saw the respect that was given both to him as us as parents, and we were very grateful for the knowledge we had learned through our service coordinator. Then we moved to our first PPT, and that was very overwhelming. It's a whole meeting where you talk all about the things that your child does differently, and the evaluations that we were going to do. And our service coordinator talked us through it. She prepared us, she calmed our anxiety, and really helped us articulate what we saw for Milo's future in education, whether it be eligible for special education or not. After that 45 days, that felt like an eternity waiting for eligibility, Milo was eligible for special education and started shortly after at our public preschool. But that second PPT, I have to say, was emotional, but we were very prepared for possible outcomes. We were able to speak about our hopes and dreams because we didn't feel as though they stopped because of a diagnosis or because of an eligibility. Our team really helped us see the beauty in our child and his differences, as well as our family and how we are a family just right for him and our other children. Without the help of Birth to Three, I think I would not have been able to articulate my son's needs. I wouldn't have been able to see him as more than a disability because at the time it felt so big. Birth to Three has given us such an incredible start to our advocacy for Milo and all of his siblings. We have become better parents due to our Birth to Three experience, and I was inspired by the incredible team of dedicated people who participated in our family, and we are eternally grateful for all the gifts that they gave us. We're so thankful for Birth to Three and the knowledge they gave us. We still use those strategies on our almost teens today. So Birth to Three really kind of goes the gamut. Thank you for your time and attention to this much needed program that shapes families through knowledge, professionalism, and empathy. Thank you very much. I appreciate you all.
Lisa, thank you so much for sharing your
Of
story
course.
and Milo's story.
Thank you. My
And
pleasure.
really heartening to hear about this like incredible, like I said in the beginning, sort of like life changing and lifelong changing work that Birth to Three does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. We will continue on, and there is a slide that's titled Part C, Exit and Transition, which is right after our pie chart. So we're going to jump ahead just a bit, but this slide will outline some of the data from our annual performance report, and some of the data on the next slide will outline Part B, or preschool special education data, in terms of referrals and how many children we're supporting as a system through each of the 2 systems. If you try to make the math, it will not math because we are reporting on a different timeline. So Part C reports on a 7/1 to 6/30 fiscal year, whereas Part B is that 10/1 reporting period. We also utilize a point in time, and our points in times are different. So I just want to highlight that if you try to say, well, this slide equates to this and your next slide does not make sense, it's just the difference in reporting. And that highlights the differences between the 2 systems and the collaboration that we have in terms of those transition plans for children, and also our commitment as agencies to really implement both systems efficiently and seamlessly. If we go to the next slide, it will outline some of the Part B data. So I will pass it to my colleague, Renee.
Thank you, Nicole. So on the next page, this data also comes from our reporting that we do to OSEP. And you'll see this is from the 23-24 school year. We are really close to reporting the 24-25 school year data, and that will be out soon. As ICC had mentioned, I think it is important to just point out that there were over 5,000 children that were referred from Part C to Part B. But when you look at the number underneath it in terms of eligibility, some of those children might have been found eligible in the 5,000, but they're not accounted for in the 3,000 for if parents had made the choice, if their child was found eligible, but did not sign consent for a provision of services. So that child did not have an IEP implemented. So I think that is just important to note. And the other thing I think is really important to note that Nicole and I and Lisa in the fall do what we call our transition roadshow across the state and meet with Part C providers and Part B providers. And one thing that we really pointed out when we look at this number of children that are referred from Part C, that's 15,000 meetings that need to happen because you need to have the transition conference, you need to have the referral PPT, and then the eligibility PPT. And those meetings often also need to happen in the school year from September to June. So when we think about our resources often also, it's important to note that the folks from the school districts that are also providing these services to these children in the classroom setting also need to attend these PPT meetings. So when we think about fitting all of this into a school day, into a school year, so that's just a note just to really think about with some of those federal responsibilities that we have to ensure what is a smooth and effective transition. And then just on the next slide, just really, as we heard from Part C, this is just the last 4 years and the number of children in Connecticut that are receiving special education services through their school districts, so 3 to 5 years old in preschool. And you can see the increase of children that we are servicing at this age. Yes. Great. And then we just have one last slide that we just had mentioned earlier on. I know we have asked about children that don't qualify for Part C services and what happens to our kiddos that are referred from Part C to Part B and are not found eligible for special education. And this outlines the state statute of those responsibilities to ensure that we are keeping an eye on those children that are not found eligible, and parents have access to an app where they're able to continue to put information around their child. And if there are some concerns that come up through that screening process, school districts are able to reach out to families and talk about what next possible steps are.
I will pass to Commissioner Trueworthy, but I did just want to thank you all. That concludes the content in our slides, but we're happy to answer any questions. We definitely wanted to reserve some time to do so with you all, but I do thank you for your time, and thank you, Representative Leeper, for coordinating and hosting this forum today.
Thank you guys so much. I know this is a ton of work when we ask you to do this for us. This isn't just like waiting on a shelf. You've spent obviously a tremendous amount of time pulling all these resources together. And I just want you to know it's really appreciated. It's really valuable. And I think we take our responsibility to meet this obligation very seriously. I'll speak for myself. I take our responsibility to meet this obligation for our youngest children very seriously. Just want to commend you all. I've worked in education a long time in our state, and it's one of the few places where it's almost unanimous agreement that Birth to 3 is like this phenomenal program. That almost never happens. And so obviously that really belongs to our providers. So if any providers are in the room or listening, you guys are doing God's work. And I think we heard that from our families too. And if Lisa's still on, I'm filing away neurospicy for sure. I don't want to totally monopolize. I think I have been doing that. And thank you for allowing us to engage in a back and forth throughout your presentation. One of the things that I thought was not addressed, but I know it's a really big time constraint, is actually the evaluation time for all the providers. And you mentioned the 14,000 referrals that you are conducting evaluations for. And so I was just wondering if you could speak to sort of the time providers are spending on evals versus the time on direct service. If you have sort of, even if it's just sort of anecdotal or feedback you hear from providers, because I know a lot of related service providers, and oftentimes you're an eval person or a direct service person. But if you guys had any insights, I'd love to hear them.
Yes, I'm still doing evals. I'm the director of our program, but I love working with kids. So the evaluations, it's a team of two different disciplines. So if the child comes in with a motor concern, there's a motor person, either an OT or PT, joined by a developmental therapist or a speech language pathologist. We do the evaluations in the home generally. Sometimes we'll do them in the community at the daycare. But generally speaking, it's, can take up to 2 hours for the team to do the evaluation with the parent. And then, we write up that evaluation afterwards to get it out to the parent within a timely period. Go ahead.
I think I'm going to just add a little caveat to that because for an English-speaking family, it takes that much time. When you add in an interpreter, which is a service that we support, want to make sure all families are being understood and understood the process and what's being said about their child. When you add an interpreter, it doubles the time frame. But our evaluations, the coding for evaluations is a flat rate that is not meeting the needs. And the other part that doesn't get covered in this is the fact that there is an awful lot of administrative function that happens in trying to schedule and track those families to be able to make all of the pieces come together. And that is, it's costly. It's costly.
If I'm remembering correctly, we've moved from direct service hours, if you're not, I think, on the autism spectrum disorder, to 5.5 hours monthly, and potentially could be spending close to that amount of time per eval, especially for if you need translation services. So I just think that's an important part of the calculation and certainly the math and the constraints on our providers as you're talking about workforce shortages. If anyone else wants to add, or if I've sufficiently covered it, that's also fine. But I think sometimes it's sort of like a hidden cost unless you're really in the field.
And we can absolutely get some data from our data system relative to current numbers. We wouldn't have the exacts per se in terms of reporting and what have you, but we can get the data that we have readily available.
Sure, thank you. Is there anybody online that had any questions?
I had a question, and it's probably been answered because I was busy going through a couple of different things at the time. But birth 3, many children don't enter school till they're 4 or 5 years old. What do we have in place for the young people who are in birth 3, but yet have not entered our regular public school system to the age of 4 and 5 years old? That gap. Is there anything that you guys probably already mentioned that I didn't hear, or how do we fill in the gap between the children between the ages of 3 and time they enter our regular public school system at the ages of 4 and 5?
Thank you for your question. It's a great question. We currently work on transition planning for children who are 3 to 5 years old and eligible for preschool special education. So those that are in our system and are approaching age 3, we work on a transition conference, and then we'll make that referral to the school district or that local education agency. And that is with parent consent. I will pass to my colleague Renee to talk about what happens in that interim period as well.
Thank you, Nicole. So the goal between Part C and Part B is that there are no gaps between services. So when that child does turn 3 years old, the child is able to start right away and receiving their special education services if they were found eligible. So through our data systems, the child is shared with the school district, and the school district is able to start that process often around 33 months. They will engage in the transition conference with birth to three and the family, and then they will schedule that first PPT and determine the needs of the child and areas that they're going to evaluate. And then prior to their third birthday, they'll review the results of that evaluation with the family. Often birth to three will attend the PPT meetings. The family is able to invite anyone that they would like. So often too, if they are in a community preschool setting, it's really great when those teachers are also involved in the process because they know the children so well and are able to provide some really important information during that evaluation. And then they will hold the eligibility PPT, they'll review the evaluation, and then if the child is eligible for special education, they'll develop an IEP, individualized education program for that child that will be implemented on their third birthday or sometimes a little bit before their third birthday.
So the idea is they might be in a preschool setting. That's the hopes are they're in a preschool setting in that school district at the age of 4. Is that
At age
correct?
3. So it's on their third birthday.
Okay.
So for some school districts, they might have a preschool program where the child's able to receive those services. Part of the PPT is looking at the whole child and determining what's called their least restrictive environment. So sometimes those services, again, might be in a preschool setting in the school district itself. Other times it can be in the community at the child's where they might be already attending preschool services, and they might receive itinerant services from a speech and language pathologist that is part of the school district, but they might go into the community. But those decisions are all individually based on the child.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator. Can I ask a couple clarifying questions? Are our public districts required to offer the special education pre-K programs if a child has a need that's above just itinerant services?
Yes, they need to provide that the environment for the child to be able to receive those services.
Thank you. And then Birth to Three is a 12-month program. And when you transition to your private preschool, your public preschool, is it the traditional calendar year, sort of September to June, if you will?
Yes, and then they also, during that PPT process, will look to determine if the child does qualify for extended school year services.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? We're doing all right on time. I was worried we were going to be running over. All right, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all today for presenting on this. And I will say, as a public school educator at the high school end, who works with students who many of whom possibly had birth to three services when they were younger, why that matters to set them up for success throughout life. And one of the biggest concerns that I heard today is that this is an entitlement program and yet is not funded to the extent that it needs to be to meet those entitlements. And I say this as a classroom teacher, knowing what it's like to try to meet the needs of, 25 students in front of me, where individually the needs may be extreme at times. And I know, and in my heart of hearts, I want to be able to reach every child, and I'm one person and I can't do that. And so what that means for the Birth to Three program, when we can't turn anybody away and we need to provide those services, but at the end of the day, we're only human and we can only provide so much. And so we need to really take a look at that and see the importance of setting that foundation in these Birth to Three programs, making sure that every child gets what they deserve, not just in name only, but actually is able to receive the services because we're providing the resources and the funds and the things that are needed for those services to truly be provided for the children. So again, thank you for the work that you're doing, and hopefully we'll be able on our end to to support that in this session and going forward.
Thank you all. You gave us a lot of your time. You gave us a lot of your time in preparation and today, and I'm so grateful that you were able to connect with your families and have them share their experiences with us. It's so impactful. So to all the families who shared and also are here or maybe listening, thank you. And I hope you also know, please reach out to us or your representative, your senator, anytime, because your stories are honestly what all this work is about. So thank you. Oh, I think I have someone else online. I'm so sorry. Rep. Haynes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to miss you there.
No problem. Thank you, Madam Chair, and for the opportunity that we have today. First of all, thank you to all of you who have come and presented to us. It's, wonderful to hear about the program in a little bit more detail. And also a very heartfelt thank you to the families, to the moms and the dad that spoke about your, private situations with your children and the fact that, calling 211 made a world of difference in not only your children, but also your family at large. So that's great. Great to hear. Just a quick follow-up question to the question that Senator McCrory asked. In regards to the children that are in the birth to 3 and when they transition to the preschool program, is it pretty much 100% of the students that are, or the children that are in the birth to 3 that go into the preschool program, or is there less of them because they've been involved in the birth to 3? I'm just curious as to when the transition happens, does it encompass all of them, or do some of them kind of, graduate out of of an IEP situation because they've done the birth to 3 program, or do they have to continue in the preschool?
Right now, what the data is showing us that 39% of the children that are enrolled in birth to 3 qualify for special ed services at age 3.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that follow-up. Appreciate the time.
One more online and then I'll come to you. Representative Menapace?
Thank you, Chairman Leeper. I just had a really quick question for you. Is I know that and this kind of relates to what Rep. Haynes and what Rep. Brown had said. I know that in speaking to some birth to 3 providers, that they had some concern about their workforce as it relates to the expansion that the state that we were hoping to do for pre-K services. I wasn't sure if that is, like I said, well-founded, that you were worried about essentially losing those workers that you have as they transition to that one, and essentially birth to 3 services being functionally left behind. It sounds as though you already don't have enough staff. And as another classroom teacher, I can tell you how meaningful early education is for later on in students' careers. And I'm a little concerned. Is that a problem that you guys anticipate?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I think in general, we have a big focus on developing both the pipeline and the retention and recruitment of the early childhood workforce. And I say that, and I speak about the childcare workforce, I speak about the birth to 3 workforce, and others that are supporting children and families across the state. And so at the Office of Early Childhood, we are doing multiple kind of strategies to try and build up that pipeline and that workforce. And so we can see better retention and growth in those areas. And so working very closely with institutes of higher education, right, to bring the awareness of the importance of the birth to 3 field and to be able to move students in that direction who are interested in that, and along with working with other community partners. But I think in general, the workforce is an area of concern and one of focus that the OEC is doing a lot in that area to try and ensure that there is a workforce there to be able to provide the services that we need.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Can I make a correction on the data that I just presented
Absolutely.
about children going on to Part B? It's 32% of children that are receiving birth to 3 services that transition and are eligible for part special education. And it's 39% that we are sure are not eligible. And then there is a 29% that sort of leave the system early that we're not sure what happens.
Thank you for that. And then Representative Reddington Hughes, did you have a question or comment?
First, I want to say again, thank you for sharing, the people here that came and shared their stories and also their experiences, which really, I think, for the day outlines how vitally important early intervention is. The one thing that I did notice was in some cases, when you had pediatrician visits, that this wasn't something that your pediatrician really recognized. With that in mind, do you think that reaching out to that medical community for these early interventions is something that is necessary?
Yes, absolutely. The pediatrician community is a really important partner, right? It's a very trusted partner with families, right? As a mom of three, right? You go to your pediatrician to ask all sorts of questions and really want to understand what to do and what to do best with that. We have a partnership with pediatricians. We do outreach to the pediatrician groups to bring more of that awareness and importance forward to make sure that they know how to make referrals to the Birth to Three system. They're supporting families to identify, right, and have those conversations with families. And I'll hand it over to Rebecca. Does this work?
So that's a lot of work that we've done in multiple different areas. I actually was at a pediatrician's office this morning, doing their staff meeting, and then I stayed and tabled for a little bit to meet with families. So a lot of work has been done. There's also a lot of work in state on the importance of developmental screening, why it's important for our pediatric medical providers to do them, as well as our childcare providers. So there's been a lot of work on them. What do you do once that screening has occurred and making those referrals? So there's been a lot of work. We actually did the podcast through CCMC, All on Birth to Three. That was released the beginning of September. I think it was the September 1st one. So there has been a lot of joint effort to get that information out there, to answer their questions, to explain our model and the research behind it, which is very different from that medical model. So it's an ongoing process, but there's been a lot of stuff done to really encourage those referrals.
And would you say that the lack of early intervention would have anything to do with the rise in numbers of the special education?
I think there are multiple factors as to why we're seeing increased numbers of referrals. I think it speaks volumes to the outreach that we're all doing, right? To connect with communities, to providers, parents, and also to reduce that stigma, right? Around that may have hindered or produced a barrier that families in the past might have experienced. We have heard anecdotally, right, that due to the pandemic, there are additional kind of challenges or issues that many families are facing. And so I think it's a culmination of all of this together as to why we're seeing increase in the number of referrals just overall. And I think actually the tremendous work that's happening, right? Families speak to families. And so when they have really good experiences, they're telling 10 of their friends. And so we're seeing that volume also increase, which is a really good sign.
Well, thank you for all your hard work.
Now we're a little over. I'm so sorry. But really grateful for all my colleagues who tuned in and have engaged, because this work is so important. I won't draw it out, but just thanks. Really grateful for all of this. And I hope this conversation is just the first of many as this session gets underway. So thank you very much. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you very much.